The porcelain urn hit the hardwood floor with a sound I'll never forget. Not a crash. Exactly. More like a whisper that ended everything. My late wife Sarah's ashes scattered across the Christmas Eve dinner table like snow, mixing with the mashed potatoes and gravy Amanda had just served. "Oops," my daughter-in-law said, not even looking at me. She was scrolling through her phone. Guess it was in the way. I stood there, 67 years old, watching 3 years of grief spill across the holiday table. My son David didn't move. He just kept cutting his turkey, eyes down, jaw tight. "Did you just—" I couldn't finish the sentence. My hands were shaking. Amanda finally looked up, and that's when I saw it. Not an accident, not even close. Her eyes were cold, calculated. She'd been waiting for this moment. "We need to talk about the house, Bob." She said my name, like it tasted bad. "David and I have been patient, very patient. But we're done waiting." I looked at my son. "David?" He still wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad, Amanda's right. You don't need this big place anymore. You're getting older. It's not safe. You should sell it and move into something manageable. Manageable." I repeated the word slowly. "You mean smaller?" "I mean appropriate for a man your age," Amanda cut in. She stood up, walking around the table, her heels clicking on the floor where Sarah's ashes lay. She was stepping on them, deliberately. "This house is worth what? 1.2 million? Maybe more in this market. David and I could really use that money." "Plans," I said quietly. "Don't play dumb." She crossed her arms. "We want to open a wellness center in Portland. Yoga, meditation, holistic healing. It's going to be huge. But we need capital, and you're sitting here in this massive house, all alone, being selfish." There it was, the word I'd been waiting for. Selfish. "This is the house Sarah and I built," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I designed every room. We raised David here. She died here, in our bedroom, holding my hand." "Exactly." Amanda's voice went sharp. "It's full of ghosts, Bob. You need to let go. Move on. Think about your son's future for once, instead of wallowing in the past." I looked at David again. He was 39 years old, 6 feet tall, my only child. The boy I'd taught to swim in the lake behind this house. The teenager I'd stayed up all night with when his mother was diagnosed. The man I'd walked through his grief when Sarah died. "Son," I said, "is this what you want?" He finally looked at me, and I saw it. He'd already made his choice. Weeks ago, maybe months. His eyes were hard, distant, like he was looking at a stranger. "Dad, you're being unreasonable. Amanda and I need this. We're asking you, as family, to help us." "Is that really so much to ask? You're asking me to sell my home. A home you don't need." Amanda's voice rose. "God, you're so stubborn. So selfish. You know what? Fine. Keep your house. Keep your memories. But don't expect us to keep taking care of you when you fall, or forget to take your pills, or can't figure out how to work the TV remote. I haven't asked you to take care of me. Yet." She smiled, but it wasn't kind. "But you will. Old people always do. And when that time comes, don't come crying to us. Because we'll remember this. We'll remember how you chose a house over your own son's dreams." David stood up. His face was red. "You know what, Dad? Maybe Amanda's right. Maybe you are selfish. You've always been about what you want. Your career, your designs, your perfect little life with Mom. Did you ever think about me? About what I needed?" The words hit harder than I expected. "David. No." He held up his hand. "I'm done. We're done. Amanda and I are leaving. And we're not coming back. Not until you can show some respect for our future." Amanda picked up her purse, making a show of stepping over Sarah's ashes again. "Merry Christmas, Bob. Enjoy your empty house." They were at the door when I spoke. My voice was calm, quiet, maybe too quiet. I made a call this afternoon. David turned. What? To my sister, Margaret. You remember your Aunt Margaret, don't you, David? The one who spent 30 years as a federal judge? I saw Amanda's face change. Just a flicker, but it was there. We had a very interesting conversation. I continued. About estate planning. About trusts. About what happens when family members engage in what the law calls undue influence and elder abuse. What are you talking about? David's voice cracked slightly. I walked to the bookshelf, pulled down a small black device. A camera, one of 8 I'd installed 6 weeks ago, after the first time Amanda had cornered me, alone, and told me what she really thought of me. What she expected from me. I've been recording, I said simply. Everything. Every conversation. Every demand. Every threat. And what happened here tonight? Destroying my wife's remains? That's not just cruel, Amanda. It's illegal. Desecration of human remains, harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. I looked at my son. Margaret explained it all very clearly. The room went silent. I could hear the clock ticking above the fireplace. Sarah had bought that clock in Portland, 35 years ago. You're blaming, David said finally. You wouldn't. I smiled. Not a happy smile. 2 months ago, I transferred this house and most of my assets into an irrevocable trust. Margaret is the trustee. The trust has a very specific clause about inheritance. If any beneficiary attempts to coerce, manipulate, or abuse me in order to access the assets, they forfeit everything, not just their inheritance. Amanda's face went white. You can't do that. I already did. The papers were filed on October 15th. Margaret has copies of everything, including tonight's videos. Dad. Wait, David stepped forward. I'm not finished. I sat down, suddenly very tired. You're going to think very carefully about what you've done, and if you ever want to have a relationship with me again, if you ever want to be part of this family again, you're going to need to make some serious changes. This is insane, Amanda said, but her voice had lost its edge. This is consequence, I corrected. I spent 3 years grieving Sarah. 3 years, where you two visited maybe once a month, always with some new scheme, some new demand. I thought I was alone. I thought I was weak. But then Margaret reminded me of something. I looked at David. Your mother and I didn't raise you to be a bully. We raised you to be better. David's eyes were wet. Dad, I didn't mean... Yes, you did. I stood up. You both did. And now, you need to leave. I have to clean up your mother's ashes. Alone. Again. They left. The door closed. The house fell silent. I knelt down on the hardwood floor and began carefully, reverently, gathering what remained of Sarah. My hands were steady now. Because I wasn't alone. Not anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. Got the video feed. It's perfect. Call me when they're gone. I allowed myself a small smile. Sarah would have approved. She'd always been a fighter. Even at the end. Especially at the end. The next few days were quiet. I spent Christmas morning alone, walking around the lake, thinking about everything that had happened. The house felt different now. Lighter, somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Margaret called on December 26th. I've reviewed everything. The videos, the audio recordings, the documentation of their previous visits. Robert, you have more than enough for a restraining order, if you want one. And the trust is ironclad. They can't touch it. I don't want a restraining order, I said. Not yet. I want them to think. You're being generous. I'm being a father. She was quiet for a moment. Sarah would be proud of you. Sarah would have thrown them out 2 months ago. Margaret laughed. It was good to hear. True. She never tolerated nonsense. Do you think they'll come back? Apologize? I think Amanda won't. She's too proud. But David. Margaret paused. David's your son. He made bad choices, followed the wrong person. But he's not gone yet. Not completely. I wanted to believe that. I really did. New Year's Eve came and went. No word from David. No calls. No texts. I spent the evening with Margaret and her husband Tom, drinking wine and watching the ball drop in Times Square. It was peaceful. Comfortable. Nothing like the drama of Christmas Eve. Then, on January 3rd, my doorbell rang at 7 in the morning. I opened it to find David standing there alone. His eyes were red. His face unshaven. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Can I come in?" His voice was hoarse. I stepped aside. The room where it had all happened. I'd cleaned the floor 3 times, but I still saw the stains sometimes. In my mind, "Amanda left," David said abruptly. "She went to stay with her sister in California. She said I was a coward, said I was choosing you over her, over our future. She gave me an ultimatum, and I picked you." He turned to face me, and I saw tears on his cheeks. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I've been so sorry. What we did, what I let happen, what I said, there's no excuse. None." I waited. Let him continue. "I've been thinking about Mom a lot. About what she'd say if she could see what I've become. Amanda and I. The business, the success, the money. And somewhere along the way, I forgot what actually matters." He wiped his eyes roughly. "I forgot about you. About family. About respect. Why did you let her do it?" I asked quietly. "The urn. You saw her do it. You had to have known." I did know. His voice broke. She'd been talking about it for weeks. How we needed to push you to make a decision. How we needed to create urgency. I told her it was too much, that we should just talk to you. But she said you wouldn't listen, that you needed a wake-up call. He covered his face with his hands. "I'm so ashamed. Dad. I watched her destroy Mom's ashes, and I didn't stop her. What kind of son does that?" "The kind who's lost his way," I said. "But not forever. Not if you don't want to be." He looked up at me. "Can you forgive me?" I thought about Sarah. About what she would want. About the son we'd raised. The boy who'd been kind and gentle before life had hardened him. "I can forgive you," I said slowly. "But things can't go back to how they were. You understand that, right? Trust isn't just given back. It's earned." "I know." He nodded quickly. "I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, if you want. Family counseling. I'll prove to you that I'm still the son you raised." "What about Amanda?" His jaw tightened. "She made her choice. I made mine. We're getting divorced." I hadn't expected that. "David, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Dad, she tried to get me to sue you. For the house. For elder abuse. Can you believe that? She wanted to claim you were mentally incompetent. That you needed a conservator. And she wanted me to be that conservator." He laughed bitterly. "When I told her no, when I said I was coming here to apologize, she told me I was weak. That I was choosing a dying old man over my future. I'm not dying. I know." He smiled slightly. "You're probably going to outlive us all. Just to spite us." I almost laughed. That sounded like something Sarah would have said. We talked for hours. David told me everything. How Amanda had started small, with suggestions that I was getting forgetful. How she'd escalated to demands, threats, emotional manipulation. How she'd isolated him from his friends, from me, making him think that her way was the only way forward. "She showed me spreadsheets," David said. "Projections of what we could do with your money. And I convinced myself that you didn't need the house, that you'd be happier somewhere smaller. I convinced myself I was doing you a favor. You were lying to yourself. I know that now." He looked around the room. "This house, Dad, it's full of memories. Good ones. Mom's paintings on the walls. The bookshelf I built in high school. The kitchen where we had Thanksgiving every year. I forgot all of that. I saw dollar signs instead of home. Your mother and I put a lot of ourselves into this place. I know. He wiped his eyes again. And I want to put in work too. To fix what I broke. If you'll let me. I thought about Margaret's words. About David not being gone yet. About second chances. There are conditions, I said. Anything. First, you go to therapy. Individual therapy. To figure out how you got here and how to avoid it in the future. Second, you don't contact Amanda unless it's through lawyers for the divorce. She's toxic, David. She'll pull you back in if you let her. Third, you help me restore your mother's garden. She spent 20 years on that garden, and it's gotten wild without her. We're going to bring it back together. David's eyes widened. The garden? Every weekend. We'll work side by side. We'll talk. We'll rebuild. Not just the garden. Us. He broke down then. Really broke down. I held my son while he sobbed. This grown man who'd lost his way and was trying to find his way back home. Over the next few months, we did exactly that. David came every Saturday morning, dressed in old jeans and boots. We pulled weeds, planted new flowers, rebuilt the stone pathways Sarah had loved. We didn't talk much at first, just worked. Let the silence be comfortable again. His therapy sessions were helping. He told me about them sometimes, about realizing how Amanda had used love bombing and gaslighting, about recognizing his own weaknesses and fears. He was reading books about healthy relationships, about boundaries, about standing up for yourself. My therapist asked me about Mom, David said one Saturday in April. We were planting roses, Sarah's favorite, about what losing her was like, and I realized I never really dealt with it. I just buried it. Moved on, met Amanda 6 months later, and jumped into that relationship because I couldn't stand being alone with the grief. Grief is hard, I said. Especially when it's your mother. How did you do it, Dad? How did you survive losing her? I sat back on my heels, looking at the lake. I didn't. For a while. I wanted to die too. But then, I remembered something she said. Right at the end. She told me that living was my job now. Living fully. Completely. Without apology. She said life was too short to waste on people who don't appreciate you. I smiled. She was a wise woman. Your mother. She was. David was quiet for a moment. I miss her. Me too. Every day. Margaret came for dinner in early May. She brought Tom, and we all sat on the back deck, watching the sunset over the lake. David had been nervous about seeing her, knowing she'd been the one to help me protect myself. But Margaret had never been one to hold grudges. You look good, David, she said, raising her wine glass. Better than Christmas. I feel better. He glanced at me. Dad's been helping me remember who I used to be. Who I want to be again. Good, Margaret nodded. Because the trust clause is still active. One wrong move and you're out. I know, Aunt Margaret. And I deserve that. You do, she smiled slightly. But your father has more faith in you than I do. So prove him right. I'm trying. Later, after they'd gone home and it was just David and me, he asked the question I'd been waiting for. What would you have done? If I hadn't come back? If I'd stayed with Amanda? Kept pushing you? What was your plan? I looked at him. I would have let you go. The trust would have taken care of the house after I'm gone. Probably donated to charity or split between my favorite causes. You would have gotten nothing. And I would have lived out my days here. Alone but at peace, knowing I'd stood up for myself. That would have killed me, David said quietly. It would have killed me too. But sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything to keep your dignity. He nodded slowly. Mom taught you that. She did. The hard way. When she was sick, she told me that she wouldn't spend her last days being anyone's burden or anyone's doormat. She died on her own terms, with her dignity intact. I owe her the same strength. We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the crickets and the gentle lap of lake water against the shore. Thank you, Dad, David said finally, for giving me another chance, for recording everything and protecting yourself, for being strong enough to say no. I needed that wake-up call, even if I didn't know it. I'm glad you came back, I said simply. I'm glad my son came back. June brought warm weather and the full bloom of Sarah's garden. It was beautiful, more beautiful than it had been in years. David and I stood at the edge of the property, looking back at the house, at the flowers, at everything we'd rebuilt together. It looks like her, David said. Like Mom's spirit is back. It does. I put my hand on his shoulder. She'd be proud of you. You know, not for what you did, but for how you fixed it. I hope so. He turned to me. I've been thinking about the future, about what I want to do. Amanda and I were so focused on that wellness center, but I don't even like yoga. He laughed. I want to go back to school. Architecture. Like you. I want to design homes, Dad. Real homes. Places where families can grow and heal and be happy. I felt something warm bloom in my chest. Pride. Hope. You'd be good at that. You think so? I know so. You rebuilt this garden. You can rebuild anything. David smiled. Really smiled. For the first time in months. Then that's what I'll do. 1 year later, on Christmas Eve, the house was full again. Not with tension or anger, but with laughter and love. David was there with his girlfriend Rachel, a kind woman who worked at the library and made him laugh. Margaret and Tom came, bringing homemade pie. Even some of my old architect colleagues stopped by with their families. We ate dinner around the same table where Amanda had shattered Sarah's urn. But the memory didn't hurt anymore. It was just a reminder of how far we'd come, how much we'd healed. After dinner, David pulled me aside. I have something for you. He handed me a small wooden box, beautifully crafted. Inside was a new urn, ceramic, hand-painted with delicate flowers. Roses. Sarah's roses. I had it made, David said quietly. I thought Mom deserved better than what happened. I collected all of her ashes that I could find. Everything we could salvage. She's whole again, Dad. Or, as whole as we could make her. I couldn't speak. Just held the box, feeling the weight of it, the love in it. I'm sorry, David whispered. For everything. I know I've said it 100 times, but I need to say it again. I'm so sorry for what we did to her. To you. To this family. I pulled him into a hug. You're forgiven, son. You've been forgiven for a long time. Now you need to forgive yourself. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone in the living room with Sarah's new urn. I told her everything that had happened. All the pain and healing and growth. I told her about David coming back, about the garden, about the future he was building. You were right, I said to the urn, to her spirit, to the memory of her smile. Living was my job, and I did it. I stood up for myself. I protected what we built, and I didn't lose our son in the process. You'd be proud of me, Sarah. I'm finally proud of me too. The house creaked around me, settling into the night. But it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of memory, of love, of second chances, and hard-won wisdom. I'd been tested on that Christmas Eve a year ago. Tested by cruelty and greed and betrayal. And I'd passed. Not because I was strong, though I'd found strength I didn't know I had, but because I'd refused to become a victim. I'd refused to let anyone take from me what I wasn't willing to give. The house was still mine. The memories were still mine. And most importantly, my dignity was still mine. That was Sarah's final gift to me. The strength to stand alone when necessary, and the wisdom to recognize when someone was worth letting back in. I placed the urn on the mantel, right where Sarah had always wanted to be displayed, overlooking the lake, surrounded by the family photos and the life we'd built together. Merry Christmas, sweetheart, I whispered. We made it, both of us, and somewhere, I swear I could hear her laughing, that wonderful defiant laugh that had gotten us through 43 years of marriage and 3 years of grief and one terrible Christmas Eve that had almost destroyed everything. But almost wasn't enough. We were still here, still standing, still home.